While Scream 7 is currently in development, there was a time when Scream 3 seemed like the absolute endpoint for this beloved horror franchise. Released in 2000, Scream 3 did split opinion with critics and fans alike, but ultimately it was designed to wrap this series up as a trilogy. And here we are, somehow nearly 25 years later, which makes me feel so old, and there are still so many Easter eggs and pieces of trivia that even the biggest Scream 3 fans have yet to pick up on. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 25 things you somehow missed in Scream 3. The reason that Cotton Weary removes his jacket. In Scream 3's opening sequence, Cotton Weary frantically races home in an attempt to stop Ghostface from killing his girlfriend, Christine. In such a panic and with no time to waste, Cotton bizarrely takes the time to remove his jacket once he finally gets home. And that's a very simple explanation to this. Basically, Liv Schreiber had been hitting the gym, thought he looked pretty darn good, and wanted to show off a bit more of his buff physique. Courtney Cox's infamous bangs were fake. At the time considered one of Scream's more stylish characters, many were caught a little off guard by Gale Weathers' haircut in Scream 3. Even Courtney Cox herself has said there was nothing worse than that hairstyle. In actuality, that wasn't Courtney Cox's real hair, with her having worn clip-on bangs during the shoot. Unfortunately, the makeup department only had one set of these fake bangs, which Courtney Cox was stuck with once they cut the bangs into the, interesting look we saw in the finished movie. On top of that, her then-husband David Arquette had already convinced Courtney Cox to cut her real hair short in a similar style to pin-up icon Betty Page. All the jokes about the series' chaotic production. Throughout Scream 3, we get to see the problematic production of the in-universe Stab 3, such as Jenny McCarthy's Sarah Darling complaining to Stab 3 director Roman Bridger about rewrites taking place every 15 minutes, or Detective Kincaid mentioning that there's 3 different versions of the film script. This was a nod to the chaotic production of Scream 2, where that sequel script leaked online and forced heavy rewrites while the film was already shooting, causing frustration amongst the cast and the crew. The violence was massively toned down, with the tragic Columbine High School massacre having taken place just 2 months before Scream 3 was to start filming. Miramax at one point considered having no on-screen violence in the movie in an attempt to avoid any negative press. When Wes Craven told them to cancel Scream 3 altogether in that case, a compromise was agreed on that the film would feature less gore than the first 2 movies and would instead lean more into the satire of the series, which of course then caused some fans to hate on the film for not being as brutal as its 2 predecessors. The cancelled return of Stu Macher. As revealed by Matthew Lillard in certain interviews in more recent years, Scream 3 was initially going to have Lillard return as Stu Macher, one of the Ghostface killers of the first movie. The plan at that point was for Woodsboro High School to be plagued by another murder spree, with Stu revealed to have orchestrated these attacks from prison. Again, once the Columbine tragedy happened, the decision was obviously made to move away from that school setting. The bathroom set is from the original movie. At around the 1 hour mark of Scream 3, there's a scene where Sydney enters a bathroom on the Sunrise Studios backlot, where she finds Emily Mortimer's Angelina hanging out in a cubicle with a Ghostface mask, as you do. What's easy to miss about this scene is that it's a recreation of the Woodsboro High School bathroom where Sydney was attacked in the very first movie. And down to the identical soap dispensers, the production design team clearly did an excellent job of replicating that set. It's the first Scream movie not to feature "Hello, Sydney." Yes, really. While Ghostface's "Hello, Sydney" is such a popular part of the Scream franchise, that line didn't actually feature at all in Scream 3. In fact, the dulcet tones of Roger L. Jackson didn't get to utter that iconic phrase in Scream 4 either, with "Hello, Sydney" eventually returning in the 5th Scream movie. The meta gag about Jenny McCarthy's casting. While talking to Roman early in the film, Sarah Darling fires off 2 meta-gags that actually refer to Jenny McCarthy's involvement in Scream 3. Firstly, Sarah moans that she's only in 2 scenes in Stab 3, and wouldn't you know it, but McCarthy herself only appears in 2 Scream 3 scenes before she's killed off. Secondly, Sarah says she's not happy that she's 35 but playing a 21-year-old, which is a nice reversal of reality, with McCarthy only 27 when she played that 35-year-old Sarah Darling. Oh hell yeah! Not so much something that you missed in Scream 3 per se, but a fun slice of trivia nonetheless. In this threequel, Family Guy's Patrick Warburton plays Steve Stone, the hefty bodyguard of Jennifer Jolie. At one point in time, consideration had been given to having wrestling legend Stone Cold Steve Austin play that role. The Texas Rattlesnake versus Ghostface sadly didn't come to pass, and we instead had Patrick Warburton mocking poor Dewdrop throughout the movie, well, until Steve Stone was killed by Ghostface, that is, of course. Richmond Arquette's cameo. While many will be familiar with David Arquette's siblings Patricia, Rosanna, and Alexis, or his father Louis, or even his grandfather Cliff, One Arquette relative who some might not be too familiar with is David's brother Richmond, and wouldn't you know it, but Richmond has a small role here in Scream 3. When Gail Weathers takes part in a seminar about journalism early in the film, Richmond Arquette plays a student who asks Gail the question about whether her fame was worth slicing people's throats for. Also, that same location was used as a college classroom in Scream 2, so there's that as well. Sydney wears the necklace given to her by Derek. Oh Derek, we hardly knew you. Sydney's butchered boyfriend from Scream 2, Derek gave Sydney his college fraternity OKB necklace in that second movie. And if you pay close attention in Scream 3, you'll see Sydney wearing that necklace throughout the film, which is a nice piece of character work to show that Sydney is still clearly grieving for Derek. By the time of Scream 4 though, that necklace was nowhere to be seen as Sydney had started to move on with her life. The nod to Wes Craven's Own Career. Poking fun at Wes Craven's Own Career, Roman at one point says he's only making Stab 3 so that he can later have the chance to work on a genuine passion project of his, that being a classic love story that the studio will only let him do once he directed a scary movie. This mirrors Wes Craven's Own Career, with the only non-horror or thriller movie of his career being the Meryl Streep starring musical drama Music of the Heart in 1999, which Miramax only allowed him to do because of the success of the first Scream. After that film, Craven agreed a 3-picture deal with Miramax where he had free reign to handpick one of those movies, which would be Music of the Heart. The other 2 films involved in this deal, yeah, that'd be Scream 2 and Scream 3. Nev Campbell wore a wig throughout shooting. It wasn't just Courtney Cox who had fake hair during Scream 3, for Nev Campbell actually wore a wig throughout the entire movie. You'd never really guess it from watching Scream 3, but Campbell's hair was long with blonde streaks in it at the time, as she was filming crime comedy Drowning Mona at the same time as filming Scream 3. And Drowning Mona required that particular look. It's pretty remarkable how great a job was done with this wig, but then again, Nev Campbell supposedly spent 2 hours each day having that hairpiece fitted. The reason for Courtney Cox and David Arquette's impressive tans. Those wondering why Gail and Dewey have a particularly warm glow to them in Scream 3, that's because the two had just got back from their honeymoon. Having got married just 3 weeks before principal photography began on the film, these lovebirds took a trip to the sunny Bahamas. A trip that was actually cut short in order to fit in with the shooting start date for Scream 3. So, if you've ever wondered why Gail and Dewey look more tanned than in Scream and Scream 2, now you know why. Angelina was originally the second killer. So far, Scream 3 is the only film in the franchise to feature a single killer, that being Roman Bridger, of course. Originally though, Angelina was meant to be Roman's accomplice. Miramax put a halt to these plans, fearing that having 2 killers would mirror elements of that tragic Columbine massacre, and so late changes had Roman working on his own. This actually explains why Angelina is often nowhere to be seen when Ghostface attacks, and it also plays into those moments where Roman seems to be able to teleport himself from place to place. Likewise, there's a piece of foreshadowing when Matt Kiesler's Tom suggests that Sydney herself could be the killer this time out, with Angelina of course playing Sydney in Stab 3. The grim irony of Harvey Weinstein's involvement. Played by Lance Henriksen, Stab 3 producer John Milton is a thorough creep who'd assaulted Sydney's mother Maureen and was very much a part of that sinister casting culture. Of course, Harvey Weinstein serves as an executive producer on Scream 3 and is currently seeing out his days in prison after various sexual assault charges were brought against him from across the past several decades as part of the Me Too movement. Eerily, Weinstein gave the green light to a plot that chillingly aligns with the abuse that he himself was still carrying out at that time, and Scream 3 also features the Angelina and Jennifer characters referencing having sex with filmmakers, while Carrie Fisher, playing a Carrie Fisher lookalike, says she missed out on a Princess Leia role due to not sleeping with George Lucas. Yet this element of Scream 3 is even more disturbing to look back on with the power of hindsight. Jennifer wears Gails Scream outfit. When the Gail Weathers of the Stab world, Jennifer Jolie, played by a scene-stealing Parker Posey, meets the real Gail for the first time, Jennifer is wearing a distinct lime green suit. That suit, that's actually the very same suit worn by Gail herself when she's reporting in the first Scream movie. And showing that she still has a love for those vibrant colours, the real Gail is wearing a rather similar bright yellow outfit during this initial meeting with Jennifer. Nev Campbell has more screen time than you think. One big complaint that some have had with Scream 3 is that it features way too little Sidney Prescott, with Sid positioned as more of a supporting character. That's not necessarily true though. Sure, Nev Campbell may have only been on set for 20 days due to those other commitments to Drowning Mona, but Sidney has 34 minutes of screen time in Scream 3, which isn't too far off of 37 minutes of screen time in Scream 2. And she's on screen here more than fellow franchise veterans Courtney Cox and David Arquette. As for Sidney's longest amount of screen time, that's 44 minutes in the original movie. The reference to Scream 2's most divisive death. Up until Dewey was off in Scream 5, the most divisive death of the entire franchise was easily the demise of Jamie Kennedy's Randy Meeks in Scream 2. And Scream 3 couldn't help but make reference to the crazed, vitriolic fan response to Randy's death from certain fans, by having Tyson comment that Cotton Weary's killer was probably some psycho fan pissed off they killed Randy in Stab 2. Wes Craven had really received a barrage of hate mail for killing off Randy, and so the legendary director ultimately decided to placate these angry fans by giving Randy that posthumous cameo in Scream 3, where he appears in a videotape message recorded before his death. The fleeting Wes Craven appearance. While many will fondly remember Scream 3's cameo from Jay and Silent Bob outside the Stab 3 set, what you may not have picked up on is that Wes Craven can be seen just behind these lovable stoners. Watch carefully and you'll see Wes walking by as a somewhat bumbling tourist wearing a hat and sunglasses and with a camera in hand. Scream 3 predicted Brangelina. Some movies have a crazy way of predicting the future, and that was certainly the case with Scream 3 and the love triangle between Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston, and Angelina Jolie that dominated tabloid headlines in the mid-2000s. Scream 3's Jennifer Jolie is clearly an amalgamation of Jennifer Aniston and Angelina Jolie, and during Jennifer's initial meeting with Gail Weathers, Gail says how she's sorry things didn't work out with Brad Pitt for Jennifer. Given that Brad ended up divorcing Aniston and got married to Jolie, it's pretty amusing coincidence that this all got unintentionally referenced years before it became a reality. Roman's scream is genuine. At the end of the movie, when Sidney jumps up from the bar and stabs Roman in the back, Roman lets out a blood-curdling scream that was way more real than was intended. While Nev Campbell was supposed to drive a prop ice pick into the padded area of Scott Foley's costume, she missed the mark, meaning Foley felt some very real pain from this miscue. Despite this, the actor himself would remain in character enough that the take could actually be used in the final end cut of Scream 3. Watch out for falling bucks. It wasn't just Scott Foley who experienced some very real pain during Scream 3's final act, for Courtney Cox received a falling buck to the head. This comes during the scene where Gail and Dewey are frantically pulling books from John Milton's bookcase in an attempt to trigger a secret door. And as David Arquette ruffles through these books, one falls and hits his then-wife in the face. It was Courtney Cox herself who told Wes Craven to use this shot in the film, even if she briefly appeared a little out of character. The Halloween H20 connection. With Scream 3's climax taking place in the swanky Hollywood mansion of John Milton, that lavish home might look familiar to eagle-eyed horror fans. A real-life Los Angeles residence called the Canfield Moreno Estate at the time, these days known as the Paramore Estate, this same mansion was used for the Hillcrest Academy from Halloween H20. The areas of the property used in Scream 3 and Halloween H20 were clearly a little different, but once you know this piece of information, it's hard to unsee it the next time you watch either of these movies. Roman Bridger has the highest body count of any Ghostface. As a result of removing Angelina as Scream 3's second killer, that means that Roman Bridger is the Ghostface with the most kills in the entire franchise so far. Responsible for all of Scream 3's murders, Roman has a whopping 9 kills to his name, placing him above Scream 4's Jill Roberts with 7 kills and Scream 6's Detective Bailey with 6. Even though he may be one of the least popular Ghostfaces, Roman is effectively the most bloodthirsty.